Today we are making orange rolls for two. They are soft, fluffy, and full of orange goodness. Now we're going to make them just like we make a cinnamon roll, but we're going to fill them with orange. Today I'm going to show you how to make small batch recipes with big taste. Whether you're cooking just for yourself or for the two of you, I've got you covered. Hi, I'm Leanne from YourHomeBasedMom.com. Orange rolls are a tradition at our house, and in fact, they're pretty much required at every Easter dinner or brunch. But don't wait until Easter to make these. They're way too good. Today we're going to use the recipe my mom has been using for literally decades. Now the original recipe makes 24 rolls, but today we're going to make 6, which is just the perfect amount of rolls for our reduced size family. But I will link to the original recipe that makes 24 in the description down below. So let's get started. We're going to start with the dough, and for that we are going to need 1/4 cup of warm water and some dry active yeast, and I'm going to use 1/2 tablespoon of yeast. Now the temperature of my water is really important. In order to proof your yeast or to activate your yeast, your water temperature needs to be between 105, no hotter than 115. If you're unsure what that temperature feels like, use a thermometer. This is my meat thermometer, a candy thermometer. I like to say it's kind of like a nice warm baby bath water temperature. So 1/2 tablespoon of our yeast, add it into our water, and we're just going to swish it around a minute. And then we're going to set it aside. But I like to cover it. You can cover it with a towel or a plate, just something over the top of it so that it kind of helps create a little bit warmer environment for that yeast to proof. And it's going to get nice and foamy and bubbly. It takes about 10 minutes. While our yeast is proofing, we're going to start on the rest of our dough. So we need another 1/4 cup of warm water. Make it about the same temperature as the one you used. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter. And I like to have this butter be softened to room temperature because we want it to, it's going to soften up some in the warm water, but we also want it to be soft enough when we mix it into the dough. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to grab a spoon, just kind of give that a little mix and let that just sit and soften up while we're waiting for our yeast to proof. We're now ready to mix our dough together. Our yeast has proofed. It's nice and foamy on top. It's ready to pour into our bowl. I am going to use my stand mixer today. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can totally do this by hand. Just takes a little bit of muscle. So let's add in our yeast mixture. We're going to add in our flour. I've got 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 egg. Don't do that. There we go. And our mixture of butter, sugar, and water. All that's going to go in, and I am going to use the hook attachment on my mixer. And we are going to let it mix up. And then we're going to turn it on. We're going to let it mix together and knead for 4 or 5 minutes until we get a nice soft and smooth dough. If you find your dough is a little sticky, add in just a little bit more flour, just a little bit at a time. Or if you feel like it's too dry, add in just a teaspoon or so more of water. Working with these small batch recipes, you only want to add in additional water or flour just a little bit at a time because it's really easy to get too much in there. All right, our dough is done. I let it knead for about 5 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, it may take a little bit longer. But you just want the dough to be nice and soft and smooth. It will be a little bit tacky, but not overly sticky. You'll be able to handle it without it, making a huge mess on your hands. I did end up adding another tablespoon or so of flour in. Your weather's going to affect it. Your altitude will affect it. So don't worry if your dough seems overly sticky, just add a little bit more flour in a little bit at a time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let this dough rise for about 30 to 45 minutes or until it's about double in size. If your house is nice and warm, that's great. If it's not, one of my tricks is I turn my oven on to whatever the lowest temperature is, 150 degrees or so. As soon as it preheats, and I turn the oven off, and I stick my bowl in there and let it rise in there. It's a nice warm environment for that dough to rise. So a little bit of trick for you. So we're going to let this rise, and while this rises, we are going to make the filling and the glaze for our rolls. All right, we are ready to mix up the filling for our orange rolls. And it is a combination of butter, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of orange zest. I basically use however much zest I get from my orange, okay? This is a microplaner. If you don't have one of these in your kitchen, get yourself one. It's one of my favorite kitchen tools. And it's just like a little mini grater. And it's what I use to zest my orange. You just rub it on here, and I've actually taken, this is the cover that comes on the microplaner. I put it in reverse, and it acts as a little holder for my orange zest. So I am going to just put in my orange zest, and I probably have more than a teaspoon there, into my softened butter. Now you want your butter to be soft so that you can mix it, all right? And then we're gonna add in our sugar, and it smells so good. Make sure I get all of it in there. And then just with your fork, mix it around and combine this yummy orange sugar. Now we're ready to mix up our glaze, which is going to go over the top of the orange roll after it's baked. And this may just be my favorite part of the orange roll. In my bowl, I have a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, and I am going to add in about a tablespoon of fresh squeezed orange juice. And we're going to mix that up until we have just the right consistency of glaze to drizzle over the top of the rolls. So I like to add just a little bit of juice in at a time, because it is really easy to go from not enough to too much. And you end up with a runny mess, and then you have to add a bunch of more sugar in. So it's easier just to go a little bit of juice at a time. I can see I need a little bit more in. Just gonna add a little bit more in until I get it's starting to loosen up that consistency I want. Okay, so I think I've got it. You just want it to run nicely right off your fork like that. Nice kind of steady stream so that it's easily spreadable on top of the roll without it totally running all the way off the roll. So our dough has risen. It has about doubled in size. We are going to take it out of the bowl, and I've just lightly floured my countertop here. And we're just gonna give it a couple little, knead it a few times. Kind of use the palm of my hand and then just turn and rotate it. If you need a little bit more flour, just spread some more flour on there so that it doesn't stick. You don't want your dough to stick to your counter. Okay, I'm gonna take my rolling pin, just add a little flour to it, and I'm just gonna roll it out into a rectangle. Just kind of rotate the dough around. And this gets to be about a 6 by 6 inch square or so. It's a perfect size. All right. Then we're going to take that filling that we made, that combination of sugar and butter and orange, and we're going to spread this onto the top of our dough. I just like to use a little offset spatula. Get just a nice even layer. Okay, then we're going to take our dough and we are going to roll it up jelly roll style. So we're going to start at the longer end and just roll it up. Okay, we want our seam, the seam to be on the bottom. And I just kind of take the ends and tuck them under a bit. And you want it to be fairly even thickness. So if it's not, you kind of push or pull or do what you need to do to get it evenly. All right, now we are ready to cut these into our individual rolls. And I've got a little trick for you. The way I like to do it is I like to use thread to cut my cinnamon rolls, my orange rolls, whatever, anything I have, any kind of dough I have to cut. Because if you use a knife, a lot of times it will smash the dough down, but using a thread, let me show you. You just take your thread like you're going to floss your teeth. You could actually even use dental floss too. Just don't use mint dental floss because, you know, mint and orange, not a great combo. So we're going to take our thread and just slide it underneath our dough right to the middle, okay? Then we're going to raise our threads up, cross them over, and then just pull, and it's going to slice right through our dough so nice and evenly. And then we're gonna just go ahead and cut each of these halves into 3 pieces because we're making 6 orange rolls. Now, if you wanted to make bigger orange rolls, you could just do 4, but I'm gonna do 6 today. All right, we've got all of our pieces cut. And I am going to use a muffin tin to bake mine in. You can put them just on a baking sheet if you prefer. I'm going to just spray each little section just a little bit so it doesn't stick. And then we're going to put our rolls into our muffin pan. And we want to put them in with the cut side up. Then we're gonna let them rise again, probably for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll be ready to bake them. We're gonna preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, so they'll be ready to go in. And I just like to cover them with a cotton towel while they are rising. All right, it's been about 30 minutes. Sometimes I cheat it a little bit and go about 20, 25, but you can see our rolls have risen. They are gonna continue to rise in the oven, so they're gonna just puff up and be beautiful. And so we're gonna bake them for about 10 to 12 minutes in a 375 degree Fahrenheit oven. You just want them to start turning nice and golden brown. And then the last step, after we pull them out, we'll let them cool for a few minutes and then we're gonna glaze them. Right, they are done and they smell amazing. I do like to let them cool for a few minutes in the pan, but not totally because of all that yummy melted sugar that's in there. If you let them cool totally in the pan, they can be a little hard to get out of the pan. So after they've cooled for a few minutes, I'm just gonna take them out and then we are gonna add the final step, which is our glaze. And I do like to, like I said, let them cool just a few minutes before we put the glaze on so that the glaze doesn't totally melt out. But how fun. I mean, they kind of raise a little crazy in the oven, but so much fun. And like I said, they smell so good. So I've taken that glaze that we mixed up earlier. That is just our powdered sugar and our orange juice. And just with an offset spatula, I'm just gonna add a little bit to the top of each orange roll. Now you can totally make these without the frosting too if you don't want that added sweet to it, but I'm all about the frosting. They are ready. Only one thing left to do. Let's give them a taste. So good. Look at that, fluffy, light. Yum. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen today. You can find the recipe for these small batch orange rolls linked in the description down below, and I'll also link to the full-size version. Be sure to click over here, check out some of my other small batch recipes here on YouTube, and I'll see you next week in the kitchen.